Welcome to the Financial Planning Standards Board's Continuing Professional Development video series. In this video, we'll be looking at putting principles into practice, client first. Today's financial services professionals are more likely to encounter difficult ethical issues than ever before. Like professionals everywhere, financial services practitioners make daily choices that have a significant impact on their clients and on consumers. Businessman Michael Josephson wrote, "Ethical people and companies often do more than they are required to do and less than they are allowed to do. The law tells us what we can't do, for example prohibitions, and sometimes what we must do, for example mandates. It does not answer the bigger question, what should we do? In other words, laws will typically tell us what the minimum acceptable behavior is in any given situation, whereas ethics requires us to do more." In the financial services industry in particular, there is a desire for trust. It's not only the current business standards, but it's also what the consumers want. Let us look quickly at what makes a professional and a profession. Number one, specialized knowledge and skills acquired through education or training. Number two, a procedure for testing, licensing, and relicensing. Number three, lifelong learning, which is the purpose of this continuing professional development video. Number four, high performance standards. Number five, service to others. And number six, a high ethical standard. The purpose of a code of ethics. A code of ethics can, 1, inspire individuals and exhort them to high principles of conduct. Number 2, regulate individuals by spelling out prohibited conduct. Number 3, provide guidelines for decision-making in areas of discretion. And finally, number 4, define and protect the company or profession's culture. The 8 principles of FPSB's Code of Ethics and Professional Responsibility. FPSB has incorporated ethical behavior and judgment and compliance with ethical standards into the global standards for investment advisors, financial advisors, and certified financial planner professionals. FPSB expects that clients of financial services professionals will benefit from a globally accepted set of ethical standards for financial services professionals. FPSB's ethical principles reflect financial services professionals' recognition of their responsibilities to the public, clients, colleagues, and employers. The principles guide the performance and activities of anyone involved in the practice of financial services. So you can see here in this document, I've included the FPSB Code of Ethics, and I will show you where you can get that from the FPSB website. So here we are at fpsb.org, which is the website for financial planning standards boards. If I click here on standards, it's going to bring me to a page where you can see standards for the profession, establishing financial planning as a global profession. So if we scroll down, we can see here's the FPSB Global Financial Planning Standards Framework. If we click here, learn about FPSB standards, it's going to take us to another page. So you can see standards for the profession, standards to support financial planner professionalism. There's several documents on this page, okay? Number 1 is the Financial Planner Competency Profile. Number 2 is the Education Framework. Number 3, this is the important document, and the topic for part of the video today, is the Financial Planner Code of Ethics and Professional Responsibility. So if you click on this, it'll bring you up the PDF document. There are 8 principles included in FPSB's Code of Ethics. Number 1 is client first, and that's the focus for this video. Number 2 is integrity. Number 3 is objectivity. Number 4 is fairness. Number 5 is professionalism. Number 6 is competence. Number 7 is confidentiality. And number 8 is diligence. Again, if we open up that PDF document, you're going to see that there's more information for each of these 8 principles. Just taking you back to the FPSB website, I'll now click on this Financial Planner Code of Ethics and Professional Responsibility PDF, and you can see it brings up the document for me. If I scroll down, there's the mission statement and a little bit of applicability of the Code of Ethics principles, but here we get into the 8 principles. So you can see FPSB's Financial Planner Code of Ethics and Professional Responsibility, principle number 1, and the topic for this video today is Client First. Place the client's interests first. Placing the client's interests first is a hallmark of professionalism, requiring the financial planning professional to act honestly and not place personal gain or advantage before the client's interests. The first principle, client first. Again, place the client's interests first is the first principle of FPSB's Code of Ethics. And to place the client's interests first, it's a hallmark of professionalism. You need to act honestly and do not place personal gain before client's interests. So the question is, how does a financial planner place the client's interests first into day-to-day practice? And that is what we're going to be looking at in more detail throughout the rest of this video. We're going to be looking at 5 scenarios to explore the client first principle. We're now going to look at 5 scenarios to explore client first. And the way that we're going to do it is we're going to look at 5 little short video vignettes that are giving us some scenarios, and then we're going to do a little bit of a discussion of each of the scenarios. So the first scenario is number 1, making uninformed choices. The second video vignette that we'll look at will be sharing client information. The third is putting unneeded pressure on clients. Number 4 is failing to properly disclose. And number 5 is unsuitable recommendations and inappropriate risk. So the first scenario is making uninformed choices. In this video that we're going to watch next, we have a scenario where we have David. He is a financial planner. He's been in practice for 3 years. He's a generalist. He does not like investments, typically delegating that to another professional. And he's having a meeting with Mrs. Lim about an investing concern.
Well, this is a surprise. We're not due for our mid-year review meeting for another 3 months. What brings you in today?
Well, my uncle died and he left me some money. I wanted to talk with you about how to invest it.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your uncle. He was very well respected in the community. Well, let's talk about your inheritance. How much did you receive?
Close to $1 million.
Oh, that's a lot of money. What were you thinking of doing with it?
Well, I have enough income, so I'd like to invest all of my inheritance. I thought I should talk to you first about the best approach, though.
Sure. I know a great fund for you. I just put 2 of my best clients into it yesterday. Here it is. This fund is from a very reputable firm. It'd be a great choice for you given your objectives and your time horizon.
Okay. So what's so good about this fund?
Well, my business partner has assured me the fund is performing well above expectations. It's very well structured and is fully backed by the issuer.
Do you agree with him?
Well, he's put 20% of our clients into the company's funds over the past 6 years, and, well, we haven't had one complaint about performance over the whole time.
That sounds great. But I've been reading a lot of horror stories about so-called good companies collapsing overnight. Are you comfortable with how solid the company is?
Trust me, they're solid. Look how well the fund's performed over the last 6 months. It's a quality investment from a rock-solid company.
All right. If you're sure.
Well, you know, no investment comes with a 100% guarantee. But if my partner wasn't sure about this one, I wouldn't be recommending it to my best clients.
Okay, let's do it.
So let us take a few moments to review that video. What do you think some of David's mistakes were? Well, number 1, he's not an investment specialist, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can be a financial planner and have an area of expertise, such as taxation or investment planning, insurance, or estate planning. But the issue is that if an area is not your speciality, then recall the FPSBs from the skills matrix is that one skill under professional practice is that a financial planner recognizes limits of competence and voluntarily seeks the counsel of and or defers to other professionals when appropriate. So in this case, David is probably being enticed by the fees with regards to assets under management getting another $1 million in. That's probably the stressor, and perhaps is suffering from a little bit of professional confidence, doesn't want to admit to Ms. Lim his limitations to his competency. Okay, so you can see some of David's mistakes: lack of research. He's really recommending an investment to Ms. Lim and doesn't have a fantastic, clear professional understanding of the product. So he hasn't done his due diligence. Also, he ignored the client's misgivings because, again, he seems to be influenced by the primary stressor of trying to get the account, get that $1 million into his accounts. Okay, so some of the principles that perhaps violated: integrity and competence for sure. Integrity, I put a question mark on that because integrity means an intention to deceive. It may not be David's intention to deceive Miss Lim, but really he is violating the principle of competence for sure. He's doing a lack of due diligence, and he's recommending something to the client that he doesn't fully understand himself. In this next video vignette, we're going to look at a scenario regarding sharing client information. So in this next video, we have Steve. He is new to financial planning career. He wants and needs quality accounts, but he discloses some client details to his sister. Now don't be confused, we're using the same actors in this scenario, but in this case it's Steve and he's new to financial planning.
Hey, you're not going to believe it. You know how I told you I really needed to pull in a big client this quarter? Well, guess what? I got one. Yeah, a couple I met at the Rotary event last month signed with me today, and they're rich. Yeah, they want to fund a scholarship for the university. We're talking real estate fortune here, so I'm sure it will be newsworthy. You should have seen the diamond ring she wore. I know, I just had to tell you. Oh, by the way, not a word to anyone about this? Thanks. See you after work. Oh, let's celebrate. Hey there.
I heard you on the phone just now talking about the DuPont account.
Can you believe it? I'm really excited. The timing couldn't be better for me.
I'm also pleased that we now have the DuPonts as clients. But I'm not pleased that you're talking about our clients with people outside the company. That's a violation of our confidentiality policy.
Oh, don't worry. That was my sister. She won't say anything about it. She's a lawyer. She understands confidentiality.
You know how important it is to keep client information private. You violated the client's trust, both in you and in our firm. I need you to deal with this right away. You need to tell the DuPonts what you did. Hopefully we can keep them as clients.
What? Are you serious? I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this. I was just talking to my sister. I never even mentioned the clients' names. I haven't begun to work with the DuPonts, and you want me to call them and risk losing them as clients? Why are you doing this to me?
Let us do a quick review of the video vignette with regards to sharing client information. So Steve most definitely violated the principle of confidentiality. He shared with his sister information about his client. He didn't necessarily give their names, but he did say that they are large real estate investors, and they were looking at making a donation to a university. You know, in a small town, putting 2 to 2 together using the mosaic theory, even without revealing the name, his sister may have been able to figure out who he's talking about. Anyhow, regardless if giving the name or not giving the name, he shared information from a conversation that is supposed to be 100% confidential in all parts. And I think one of the issues is Steve did not put himself in his client's shoes. I think if he walked in his client's shoes and found out that he had had a discussion with someone that was meant to be confidential, and the person with whom he spoke to was sharing bits and pieces of that conversation to other people, even without giving Steve's name, I think he would also feel somewhat violated. So the principle of confidentiality has definitely been violated in this case. Then the next issue is that putting the client first is active, not passive. You need to actively protect client confidentiality. We can understand some of the stressors. You're a young person, new to financial planning, might have just landed a very big client. You're very excited about it. You'd like to share that with perhaps a friends or a family, your success. But in this industry, financial planning, dealing with clients and their very personal financial information, it has to be 100% confidential. Okay. The next issue is that should Steve apologize to the DuPonts? And that would be a good topic for a discussion in a classroom situation, because definitely people are going to have different opinions on this. Will it make the situation worse? Probably. Is it the right thing to do? Yes, it is. Two wrongs don't make a right. He made a mistake. He should admit to his mistake. So some questions I'd like you to reflect on. Do you agree that Steve violated the code of ethics? Number two, what do you think that Steve could have done differently? I would say that he definitely shouldn't share any information from any conversations with any clients to anyone. Are there times when you might fall prey to the same dynamics that affected Steve? Yes, as I mentioned, sometimes you spend a lot of hours at work, you deal with a lot of people. It's very difficult then to separate sometimes your personal life from your professional life when you'd like to share some things that happened in your work life to people that are in your personal life. But at the end of the day, when you're dealing with client information that's meant to be confidential, it has to remain confidential. So what might you do to avoid making the same mistakes as Steve? Well, again, you need to be proactive in terms of maintaining client confidentiality. In this next vignette, we're going to look at a scenario of unneeded pressure. So in this next short video, we have Ian. He's an established financial planner whose wife is seriously ill, and that's putting some pressure on him because of increased medical expenses are creating him some financial troubles. So he's having a meeting with Ms. Chin, his new prospect, and it's creating a real dilemma for Ian. Again, we're using the same actors, don't be confused, but in this scenario vignette, we're looking at Ian, established financial planner, his wife seriously ill, meeting with Ms. Chin, who is a prospect.
Welcome. How can I help you today?
Actually, my mother suggested that I see a financial planner. Can you tell me about your qualifications?
Oh, of course. Here's some information about me. You can read it later. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I come from a close family, and my grandparents set up a fund for me that will become available next month. So I thought I'd start talking to some financial planners now.
Well, how much money do you have to invest?
About $2 million. Oh, do you normally work with accounts that size, or is it too small?
No, that's fine. I can work with it. In fact, my 2 o'clock client canceled, so we can get started on some of the issues today.
Oh, I wasn't expecting to start working with a financial planner so quickly. I'm still not even sure what I want to do yet.
Oh, that's fine, because that's what I do as a part of the financial planning process.
Well, that's good. But can I have some time to think it over?
Well, absolutely. But why don't we take the time I have free this afternoon and we can work through some of the issues.
Then you'll have some idea of what's possible before you decide what to do. And then you can decide whether to work with me.
This is all happening so fast.
Would you bring in a client engagement form and some tea, please?
So let us do a quick review of the video vignette on unneeded pressure. So Ian is letting his financial distress impact his interaction with Ms. Chin. You can see he's very anxious to get that account open, and he's being overly aggressive. Financials need to be self-aware. He has to understand that, better understand some of the pressures that he's under, and not let that influence his behaviors with his prospects. Okay, so let's just look at some of the potentially violated principles. Perhaps the principle of professionalism was violated, fairness, and integrity. Let's just take a minute to look at the FBSB principles in a little bit more detail with regards to professionalism, fairness, and integrity, and give some thought to whether you feel those principles have been violated. Now is a good time in the video to perhaps go back and fully review the Financial Planner Code of Ethics and Professional Responsibility. In this last video vignette, we're suggesting that Ian violated the principles of professionalism, fairness, and integrity. So I thought it'd just be a good time in the video to just quickly review the 8 principles in more detail. So principle number 1, client first, we've already looked at that. Place the client's interests first. Placing the client's interests first is a hallmark of professionalism, requiring the financial planning professional to act honestly and not place personal gain or advantage before the client's interests. Principle number 2 is integrity. Provide professional services with integrity. Integrity requires honesty and candor in all professional matters. Financial planning professionals are placed in positions of trust by clients, and the ultimate source of that trust is the financial planning professional's personal integrity. Allowance can be made for legitimate differences of opinion, but integrity cannot coexist with deceit or subordination of one's principles. Integrity requires the financial planning professional to observe both the letter and the spirit of the Code of Ethics. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that in these scenarios, deceit may not be intentional. However, that's not the case with the most important factor with regards to integrity. Read that last sentence again. Integrity requires the financial planning professional to observe both the letter and the spirit of the Code of Ethics. So if you're falling down on some principles, then you're also violating the principle of integrity. Okay? So just scrolling down a little bit more, looking at the next 2 principles, principle 4 is fairness. Fairness. Be fair and reasonable in all professional relationships. Disclose and manage conflicts of interest. Fairness requires providing clients what they are due, owed, or should expect from a professional relationship, and includes honesty and disclosure of material conflicts of interest. It involves managing one's own feelings, prejudices, and desires to achieve a proper balance of interests. Fairness is treating others in the same manner that you would want to be treated. So again, in that last vignette, you see is Ian being fully fair. Well, he's pressuring the client to try to get the account open, and perhaps that's not 100% fair and what you would expect from a professional relationship. Okay. Principle number 5 is professionalism. Act in a manner that demonstrates exemplary professional conduct. Professionalism requires behaving with dignity and showing respect and courtesy to clients, fellow professionals, and others in business-related activities, and complying with appropriate rules, regulations, and professional requirements. Professionalism requires the financial planning professional, individually and in cooperation with peers, to enhance and maintain the profession's public image and its ability to serve the public interest. So again, you can question Ian's professionalism in that last vignette, because is he showing courtesy to the prospective client? Well, again, it's kind of a high pressure sales tactic that he's engaging in due to perhaps some personal pressures that he is under. Finally, I'd just like to review the last 3 principles. Principle number 6 is competence. Maintain the abilities, skills, and knowledge necessary to provide professional services competently. Competence requires attaining and maintaining an adequate level of abilities, skills, and knowledge in the provision of professional services. Competence also includes the wisdom to recognize one's own limitations, and when consultation with other professionals is appropriate, or referral to other professionals necessary. Competence requires the financial planning professional to make a continuing commitment to learning and professional improvement. And that's what you're doing today, folks. You're doing a CPD course with regards to ethics, putting the client first, and you're making a continuing commitment to learning and professional improvement. Congratulations and thank you. Principle number 7 is confidentiality. Protect the confidentiality of all client information. See that word, all client information, not just their names. Confidentiality requires client information to be protected and maintained in such a manner that allows access only to those who are authorized. A relationship of trust and confidence with the client can only be built on the understanding that the client's information will not be disclosed inappropriately. And finally, the last principle, number 8, diligence. Provide professional services diligently. Diligence requires fulfilling professional commitments in a timely and thorough manner and taking due care in planning, supervising, and delivering professional services. Again, that was just a quick review of the Financial Planner Code of Ethics and Professional Responsibility, and this document can be found on the fbsb.org website. So we're going to follow up with some looking at some questions with regards to that video vignette that we looked at on unneeded pressure. So you can see the first question: do you agree Ian violated the Code of Ethics? And that's why I just wanted to spend a little bit of time going through the 8 principles from FBSB Code of Ethics, because we were talking that Ian likely violated the principles of professionalism, fairness, and integrity. So it was a good time just to review absolutely what those principles are. Okay, and you can think about that. The issue with ethics is not always black and white, and that's why it's quite interesting to sometimes do this in a classroom environment. People are going to have different opinions, to what extent certain principles were violated. And that's why we get you to think, sit back and think about it. Do you really agree that Ian violated those principles in the Code of Ethics? What do you think Ian could have done differently? Well, in my opinion, I think Ian, what he could have done differently is not let his personal circumstances influence how he's interacting with a potential client. And what he could have done differently is not such a high pressure sales type tactic. Are there times when you might fall prey to the same dynamics that affected Ian? Definitely. If you're under financial pressure or other pressures, you've got targets, deadlines, and commitments from your boss. These pressures are the dynamics that can affect your behavior, and you need to be aware of that. You need to be self-aware. So what might you do to avoid making the same mistakes as Ian? What you want to do is to treat your clients and prospects in a professional manner so as to not violate any of the principles of FBSB's Code of Ethics. In this next video vignette, we're going to look at a scenario of failure to disclose. So we have Sun. Sun is a well-established financial planner. She has a fee-based practice, and she is licensed to sell annuities. She's meeting with a long-term client, Mr. Dvorak. They have a good relationship, and Mr. Dvorak has new concerns about his retirement and is considering some changes. So again, we're using the same actors in this vignette, but now we have Sun, who's a well-established financial planner, meeting with Mr. Dvorak. It's an existing client. They have a good relationship, and he does have some new concerns about his retirement.
Thanks for seeing me on such short notice. I didn't want to wait for our regular meeting.
Sure. What did you want to talk about?
Well, I went to a meeting at our club a couple of weeks ago, and we had a guest speaker talking about retirement. Now, I'm happy with what you're doing, but he really started me thinking.
Oh, yeah? About what?
Well, he talked about how people are living longer and running out of money. He said an annuity could protect against that, and he gave me this brochure. What do you think?
I know this one. It's a good company and a good product. How much were you thinking of investing?
I was thinking about $800,000.
Well, I believe the financial plan we've developed for you is sufficient, but if you'd like to buy this annuity, it does fit into the overall plan, and I can help you with it.
Oh, I thought you were a fee-only planner. You sell products?
I am a fee-based planner, but the firm has some connections with a few companies to provide products to our clients when they need them, and this company is one of our partners.
Oh, that would be great. I thought I was going to have to go to a different company to buy the annuity. But how does this affect the fee I pay you for financial planning and asset management?
The money I earn or don't earn doesn't mean that I won't do what's best for you. The insurance company will pay me a one-time fee when you accept, so my compensation works out to be about the same.
Okay, great. What do we need to do?
A quick review of the video vignette on failure to disclose. Sun most likely violated the ethical principles of fairness and integrity. Recall, fairness is about disclosing conflicts of interest or potential conflicts of interest. Now, Sun and her client have an existing relationship. She receives a fee-based compensation for services, but with regards to this annuity, there would be some type of commission or compensation being paid, and she is not fully disclosing what that is to her client. Now, again, this product might be wholly appropriate for her client, but the fact of the matter is you still need to fully disclose all the ways that you're being compensated. To not do so, you're in violation of the ethical principle of fairness, failing to disclose a conflict of interest, okay? And so again, getting back to that integrity, we see it again. In that case, is she being willingly deceitful, or is she trying to save time? Again, that's up to a question, for discussion in terms of the motivation. Regardless of the motivation, that's why I wanted to review the code of ethics. Is that if you violate the ethical principle of fairness, then almost automatically you're in violation of the ethical principle of integrity. Okay, because you need to adhere to not only the code of ethics but also the spirit. Okay, so again, what would be the primary potential stressor? It would be perhaps the loss of client in the income. The client seems interested in the product, and if a Sun is not going to sell that product to the client, perhaps he may go somewhere else for that piece of business, and she will lose the commission. So did Sun really do anything to harm Mr. Vorak? Well, it's a product that he wants, and give the customer what they want is sometimes the case. But the fact of the matter is she needs to disclose what the compensation arrangement is, and ethical lapses can cause harm. Some of the implications are it can result in a lack of loss of trust and confidence between Sun and her client. Again, some of the questions that I would like you to consider and reflect on is, number one, do you agree that Sun violated the code of ethics? And if so, which principles within those, the 8 principles within the code of ethics, do you believe that Sun violated? Again, some of this is open for discussion and opinion. What do you think Sun could have done differently? Well, I think that's pretty clear. What she could have done differently is fully disclose what the compensation arrangement may be. She may be fee-based or commissioned, and on this product in particular, receiving an extra compensation above and beyond what her normal fee arrangement is. Well, if that is the case, then she needs to disclose that clearly in language that is understandable to her client. Are there times when you might fall prey to the same dynamics that affected Sun? Absolutely. Sometimes there are different products with different commissions or compensation arrangements. Regardless, all of that needs to be disclosed to your client. And if so, what might you do to avoid making the same mistakes as Sun? You want to be fully open and transparent and fully disclose all conflicts of interest or potential of conflicts of interest to your client. So now we're down to our 5th and final video vignette with regards to client first and looking at some of the ethical principles and ethical violations. And this video vignette is going to be looking at unsuitable recommendations. So we have Karen. Karen is a conscientious financial planner, and she's struggling with the impatience of her client, Mr. Braun. Mr. Braun is intimidating, and Karen feels rushed. Again, we're using the same actors, so don't get confused. Karen is a conscientious financial planner struggling with the impatience of her client, Mr. Braun.
Welcome back. Did you complete the questionnaire?
No, I don't have time for all that. But I'm not sure we need to do it. I told you when I want to retire and how much money I want to live on. Isn't that enough to do a plan?
Well, your feedback will help me determine the best planning options for you. The risk profile section is especially important because it'll help me select investment options to meet your objectives.
Yeah, I get all that. But I can take whatever risk you think I need to, so long as I can retire when and wherever I want.
Yes, definitely I can put something together for you, but it's going to be fairly aggressive to meet your goals. The best I can do is run the numbers based on historical performance and then look at the current situation to estimate how well the investments might work for the future. Normally in your situation, I'd develop a portfolio to return 6% per year. We could do something to try to get twice that. No guarantees, of course.
Wow, is that possible? Well, that sounds great.
Okay, why don't you give me a few hours to do the calculations? Let's meet again at 3 o'clock.
Sounds good.
Here's a list of investments that can provide the return you need. Some of the products are pretty sophisticated, but I can talk you through them in general.
Great. Let's get the paperwork going.
So a quick review of the video vignette with regards to unsuitable recommendations. Karen most likely violated the ethical principle of diligence. Recall, diligence is to provide professional services diligently. Diligent requires professional commitment in a timely and thorough manner, and taking due care in planning, supervising, and delivering professional services. So Karen is subject to Mr. Braun's impatience, but and because of his impatience, she is not going to provide professional commitments and services with the proper level of due diligence. Okay, so she's not putting her client's interests first because she's not taking enough time to go through the correct discovery process and the correct steps of financial planning. Okay, so a question to ponder and think about and reflect on is, when is it appropriate to turn away a prospect or fire a client? That could be an interesting discussion, but it's something to think about. Again, some questions to reflect on based on the video is, do you agree that Karen violated the code of ethics? If so, which principles do you believe that she violated? What do you think Karen could have done differently? Well, in my opinion, she needs to take better control of the situation and help guide her client through the financial planning process. Okay? Are there? And we're going to review that in a minute after this last video is getting close to the summary of this CPD lesson. We're going to go through exactly what those steps are, and I think when we do that, you're going to see that in this case, with regards to the recommendations, she's not going through the correct process. Okay. Are there times when you might fall prey to the same dynamics that affected Karen? Yes, most definitely. When you're dealing with clients, potential clients, you're dealing with different personalities. Some personalities may be more forceful. The person may be older, more powerful, more wealthy, and they're trying to get you to do things that perhaps are outside your comfort zone, and you're willing to do it, being pushed to do it based on some type of power dynamic. So definitely there are times when you might fall prey to the same dynamics. If so, what might you do to avoid making the same mistakes as Karen? I really think that the best advice is you need to stick to the process, well-defined and structured process, and really be adamant that to best serve the client and to be diligent, to provide services diligently, you need to stick to the process. And we're going to look at that next. Okay, based on that last video vignette, I just want to take a couple of minutes here to go and review the financial planning process. So again, the first step in the financial planning process is to establish and define the relationship with the client. Step number 2 is to collect the client's information, and that's going to include both quantitative and qualitative information. And you could see in that case, Karen was trying to collect some more information from her client, but it was very difficult because of his impatience. Step number 3 is to analyze and assess the client's financial status. Step number 4 is to develop the financial planning recommendations and present them to the client. Step number 5 is to implement the client's financial planning recommendations. And finally, step number 6 is to review the client situation. So here you could see that in that last vignette, Karen was having real troubles in terms of collecting the client's information, trying to get some risk profile, risk information from the client with regards to his ability and willingness to take on risk. And also in terms of developing the recommendations and implementation, she was saying, come back in a couple of hours and we'll have something sort of whipped up for you. And so you can see, the recommendation is to have the client fully understand what the financial planning process is and to guide the client through that process. And with regards to collecting the client's information, there might be certain questionnaires or risk profile tools and techniques that you need to use. In general, what I'm saying is Karen has to slow down that process. Again, because that last video vignette was dealing primarily with investments and due diligence with regards to those investments, I just want to take a quick moment to review the 6 financial planning components, and then we'll go through the kind of steps that are required under the area of investment planning. So recall the 6 financial planning components that you must be well aware of are: number 1, financial management; number 2, investment planning; number 3, insurance and risk management; number 4, retirement planning; number 5, tax planning; and number 6, estate planning. So we can see that for each of these 6 areas, the process that we go through is we gather and prepare quantitative information, we gather qualitative information, we assess the client's situation, consider and evaluate strategies, and then we develop the recommendations to optimize the client situation. You can see here that I have a document embedded in the PowerPoint called FBSB Competency Profile, and I want to show you where you can find that on the fbsb.org website. So here I am again at fbsb.org, Financial Planning Standards Board's website. And if I click here again on Standards, and I scroll down, and we look at these different frameworks, so you can see FBSB's Global Financial Planning Standards Framework. Learn more about FBSB standards. Again, there's these very valuable documents that you may want to go and review. And in this case, what I want to look at is the Financial Planner Competency Profile and do a quick review of what is required under the investment planning and show how it relates to that video and how Karen is really not taking enough time or going through the correct process or steps. Okay, what I want to look at now, I've got the FBSB competency profile. I've got the topic area of investment planning open, and I've got all the elements that are required, to be fully diligent. So you can see you've got your collection phase where we're going to gather quantitative information. We're going to gather qualitative information. Then there's the analysis stage where we assess the client's situation and we identify and evaluate strategies. And then finally there's the recommendation stage, and that's all heading into the the investment planning part of the financial plan, which is also going to include financial management, insurance and risk management, retirement planning, tax planning, and estate planning. Again, I just wanted to go through this because if we looked at that last video vignette with Karen and her client, it's really being a rush process, and I just wanted to fully review all these different elements with regards to investment planning, and you can see she's not doing a good or professional or diligent job. So if we start here looking at gathering the quantitative information, what are we talking about? Collects information to prepare a detailed statement of investment holdings, determine the client's current asset allocation, identifies cash flows available for investment. Well, we saw a little bit of that in the video, that there's some cash available for investment, but we're not going through a lot of these steps. And in particular, if we look at gathering the qualitative information, what are the steps of the elements? Client's investment experience, attitudes, and biases. You can see Karen was trying to get to that, asking Mr. Braun, trying to get some risk profiling, but he was very resistant to share information with regards to his experience, attitudes, and biases. There was a little bit discussion about the return expectations, 6% in this vehicle, perhaps 12% in another one, can't be guaranteed, but there was not a lot of discussion about what the client's returns expectations, nor was there much discussion on the client's tolerance for investment risk. Again, another element with regards to investment planning in terms of gathering qualitative information is identify the client's assumptions and return expectations and mutually agree on the planning assumptions. There was a little bit of that being done in the video, but not quite. And again, there was absolutely nothing with regards to the client's time horizon being discussed. So again, you can see that there's quite a bit of information that is really required to be collected during the quantitative information and qualitative information gathering stages. Based on the information that you gather, you're going to assess the client's situation. So you're going to come up with that required rate of return to reach the client's objectives. Is it the 6%? Is it the 8%? Is it somewhere in between? Determines the characteristics, including related expenses of investment holdings. Determines the implications of acquiring and disposing assets, and considers the potential investment planning strategies. So there was some brief discussion about different strategies, but not enough in that last video scenario. So moving on here to identifying and evaluating strategies, the elements are assesses whether investment return expectations are consistent with the risk tolerance. So Karen wasn't able to do any type of proper risk profiling with Mr. Braun. So again, we're just trying to show you all these different elements with regards to investment planning from FBSB competency profile, relating it back to the video, and we can see that the process is lacking. Identify and evaluate strategies. The next element assesses whether asset holdings are consistent with the risk tolerance and required rate of return. Again, we didn't get much on Mr. Braun's risk tolerance. And finally, analyze the client's current holdings. Once we've done the collection and analysis stages, we're going to move it to the recommendation. And starting here, we're going to start to formulate the investment planning strategy, evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of each planning strategy. So again, there was a couple of alternatives perhaps being presented to Mr. Braun, but we're not looking at the advantages and disadvantages of each planning strategy. Karen wasn't being given the time to properly present. Select the appropriate investment vehicle to implement the recommended strategy, and then utilize the optimal strategies to make the investment planning recommendations. So come back in a few hours and we'll have something whipped up for you, but that again is definitely not being based on this thorough process that we see with regards to the competency profile for investment planning. Okay. Prioritizes action steps to assist the client in implementing the investment planning recommendations. Prepares an investment policy statement. Well, we're not seeing any type of investment policy statement being formulated for Mr. Braun, and that there's a lot of work and there's a lot of time that goes into gathering the quantitative information, the qualitative, assessing the situation, identifying and evaluating the strategies, and then making those recommendations. Part of that is having an investment policy statement. No mention of that whatsoever in that video. And then finally, preparing some periodic reporting material. Well, that would be further down the line. Again, just a quick review of the 6 financial planning components, because that last video was with regards to investment planning. I thought that I would take you through FBSB's competency profile and the collection, analysis, and recommendation elements for investment planning. So moving on now, you can see that we reviewed the 8 principles from FBSB's Code of Ethics. And so I just want to talk a little bit about the value of an ethical code. Again, there's diverse individual perspectives. A lot of ethical issues are not black and white. There's shades of gray. And depending on where you live, where you work, there's going to be diverse individual perspectives and different business practices. Okay? There's varying degrees of ethical development. So having a ethical code, FBSB's Code of Ethics, it provides a framework for decision making, and it provides a context. And that's part of the purpose of this CPD video, is to refresh you with FBSB's Code of Ethics, the 8 principles, looking at some scenarios where some of those ethical principles may have been violated, and then some discussion about, do you agree, and looking at some of the questions to consider. Okay, so the ethical code also provides a context for decision making. A quick review of FBSB Code of Ethics. So again, the topic for this video, the real focus was on client first, but some of the video scenarios were also bringing up ethical principles such as integrity, objectivity, fairness, professionalism, competence, confidentiality, and diligence. Those are the 8 principles under the FBSB Code of Ethics. Recall near the beginning of the video, we asked the question, how does a financial planner place the client's interests first in day-to-day practice? And then we went through 5 video vignettes and some scenarios, and we discussed them a little bit and tried to apply it to the FBSB Code of Ethics and the 8 principles. Again, so in terms of putting things into a day-to-day practice, well, number one, you can imagine hypothetical situations, things that could happen or could not happen at your work and how you would handle those events. But more importantly, I also like to read about ethical things happening not only in my own country but in other countries, and really try to relate that to the environment and what are the events and what would you do if you were faced with certain circumstances. So again, a bit of the purpose of this CPD video is to try to apply the practice to real life. Again, we use some video vignettes and some scenarios to kind of stimulate your thoughts and discussion on ethics. Foundations of trust. Trust is the foundation of the advisor-client relationship. This is overlooked by many advisors. Some advisors take serious risks cultivating and preserving trust through their communication practices, empathetic skills, and competence. So we're down to the last slide for this presentation, the CPD presentation on putting clients first. And it's talking a little bit about the benefits of high ethical standards. High ethical standards inspires trust. And the financial planner relationship with clients is based on trust, okay? And if you have a reputation for being trustworthy, you're probably going to get referrals from people that trust you to other people that they trust, and that's going to help you build your business, okay? So the benefits of high ethical standards inspires trust, helps you build a business. You can do well by doing good. And that is the conclusion of this video, Financial Planning Standards Board, Putting Principles into Practice, Client First. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.